Well, hi there. This is one of the craziest frogs I have ever seen. I'll give you a few seconds just to look at it. It's called a purple frog. They're from a small portion of the Western Ghat Mountains in southern India, where you are very unlikely to ever see them as adults. They weren't formally described until 2003, though the juveniles, which might be the weirdest tadpoles I've ever seen, were described almost a century before that. So you might see these weird tadpoles, but it is very unlikely that you would find adults. Which is a shame, because as weird as they are as juveniles, they are at least as weird as adults. I mean, I've seen chubby little frogs before, but I have never seen one with a head even remotely like that bizarre micro-noggin. What is even going on? That is the question. Why is it like that? Let's start with the tadpoles, because they are certifiably weird. I mean, it has the head of a rubber-lipped plecostomus, and its tail has a very small fin portion compared to most tadpoles that I've ever seen. But mostly the head is huge and flat, with a giant mouth compared to most tadpoles. Why is it like that? Well, mostly this is an adaptation to the fact that purple frog tadpoles live primarily in fast-moving hill streams and use that flat body and large sucker mouth to hold on. You find similar adaptations in many very distantly related fishes, like hill stream loaches. So they have a giant head and a huge mouth as juveniles, but why do they have the exact opposite of that as adults? Have you ever seen a frog with a more disproportionately tiny head as an adult? Or a weirder face? I mean, this frog that we found in South America probably has the strangest face of any frog that I've ever seen personally. Peepa Peepa probably gives it a run for its money. And it is a thoroughly weird frog as well, but I think the purple frog puts them both to shame. This looks like a decapitated frog that died a couple of days ago and has become massively bloated and discolored. And then the startled baby soft-shelled turtle that it ate while waiting in line behind Marie Antoinette and Anne Boleyn decided to poke its face out and see if it couldn't figure out where the frog's head had gone. So why is it like that? Why is it so radically different from other frogs, which generally have large eyes, large heads, and large mouths? Why does it have a tiny head with tiny eyes and a relatively tiny mouth, and a pointy, white-tipped nose? It actually has a lot to do with the reason that you are so unlikely to see one, even if you're near where they live. Because you might be just a few inches from one and never see it, because they live underground. This video is sponsored by ZocDoc. Healthcare is an important part of overall well-being, but navigating insurance and appointments can feel stressful and overwhelming. Honestly, we live in a time when purchasing things and even researching those things to pick the best one is so easy, but that doesn't seem to be the case when it comes to picking a doctor or scheduling an appointment with one. There has to be a better way. That disconnect between I should probably get this checked out and actually being seen by a doctor is what ZocDoc helps with. ZocDoc makes it super easy to just find a real doctor in-network with actual availability right from your phone. You can hop on the free ZocDoc website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors, choose the right one for your needs, and click to book an appointment instantly. Whether you're looking for dermatology, dentistry, primary care, eye care, or one of the other 200 specialties offered by ZocDoc, you can easily search by specialty or symptom to build the care team that's right for you. ZocDoc makes it easy to book in-network appointment with more than 150,000 providers across all 50 states and thousands of verified patient reviews to give you a real sense of who your doctor is and what their patient care is like. Plus, ZocDoc helps you get appointments fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking, and you can even score same-day appointments. No need to call doctors' offices and wait on hold either. ZocDoc lets you do everything online. If you want to make booking care feel simpler, go to ZocDoc.com/reptiles. That's ZocDoc.com/reptiles to book an appointment with a provider who will listen, understand, and support you. The link is also at the top of the description and in the pinned comment. ZocDoc makes it easier to explore your options and take the next step with getting care, and that's something we appreciate. Thanks again to ZocDoc for sponsoring this video, and to you for watching. Now back to the video. And I've seen plenty of other frogs that spend considerable time underground. Things like spadefoots and burrowing frogs. All frogs that look like frogs. If anything, their eyes and heads are larger than normal for their sizes. They're really cute, but they look nothing like bloated frog corpses with tiny turtle faces. They look like frogs because they don't live underground in the way that purple frogs live underground. Most frogs that spend time underground emerge to do frog things. This is especially true of feeding. They just hang out underground during times that are not so hospitable on the surface for amphibians, waiting for the rains to return and frog activities to resume. Not purple frogs. They are much more committed to this subterranean life. These guys feed underground, mostly on termites, which is really hard to do if you're a frog. Most frogs look for food with their huge eyes and then capture food by flipping out their sticky tongues and pulling them back in with food attached. None of that really works underground. And that's why most frogs, even subterranean frogs, do their feeding on the surface. But not purple frogs. Being underground, large eyes are of little use. Eyes can tell you that you are not underground, if that ever happens to you, and they're useful when you do come out to mate. Hard to put your tadpoles in a hill stream if you lay your eggs underground, though most do generally call while still slightly underground. But if you ever do get to see them call, it's quite a thing to behold. Most frogs expand a vocal sac in their lower jaw to form a resonance chamber, like you see as part of a drum or subwoofer, to amplify their calls. But what if you have the head of a baby turtle? Well, apparently then it looks like your shoulders fill with air to form the resonance chamber. It's wild. And since you can't see your food, you need to find it another way. Since they feed on highly social subterranean insects that communicate and coordinate using chemical signals, an excellent chemosensory ability is highly beneficial to find them. Purple frogs have highly sensitive vomeronasal organs. That's the Jacobson's organ. You probably know it from snakes and other lizards, but it is also present and functional in many other tetrapods, though not all. But it works great in purple frogs. And that long, skinny nasal protrusion is highly touch sensitive, allowing them to not only detect the chemical trails of their prey, but feel them when they get close. Of course, getting close to a termite is not enough. You need a way to invite that termite into your mouth. And opening a mouth and flipping out a sticky tongue won't work well underground for a number of reasons. Instead, they drop the bottom of their mouth, and using modifications to the structure of the mouth to make it somewhat straw-shaped, they suck up termites like a vacuum cleaner shaped like a bloated headless frog. And the overall shape of the head, like a wedge with a white termite probe on the end, is a great shape for plowing through the earth. So that explains one crazy face. But what about this one? Bats often have crazy faces, especially nasal screamers. You know, those bats that emit their echolocative screams using their noses, not their mouths. We have a full phylogeny of bats if you're not. And I'm tempted to do a feature-length phylogeny of amphibians soon, so let me know if you're into that kind of thing. But this bat isn't even a bat that uses echolocation to navigate. I mean, just look at its tiny ears. Those aren't the ears of an echolocating bat, nasal or buccal. Those are the ears of a megabat, like a flying fox. Probably the bats with the least bizarre of all bat faces. I mean, most look a lot like foxes, which they're not. Of course, not all foxes are foxes either, but these super aren't foxes. I mean, if you've seen the documentary that we just released on all the mammals, a documentary we have been working on for over 3 years, then you would know that foxes are more closely related to whales than they are to flying foxes. And bats are more closely related to whales than they are to lemurs. But that face is also pretty lemurish. And lemurs and foxes are both animals that are generally regarded as some sort of cute. So megabats are generally cute. But I'm not sure that this bat, the hammerhead bat, which is a megabat, fits the common definition of cute. Though from some angles, I do think they're pretty cute. But from any angle where you can see their faces, they're pretty odd. And from some angles, well, it definitely makes you wonder, Why are they like that? These are the largest bats in Africa and are, as is typical of megabats, fruit-eating bats. And the weird ones are the males. Females look a bit unusual, but nothing to write home about. It is the males that look really bizarre. Which alone should probably tell you that this likely has something to do with attracting or otherwise obtaining mates. Perhaps this crazy face is super attractive to females, like the plumage of birds of paradise. I mean, bats and birds both fly, and conspicuous features that are attractive to mates are common for birds. Or maybe it helps them detect pheromones of females, like the huge antennae of June beetles, which also fly and fly around sniffing for mates. And that is one huge and elaborate schnoz. But the truth is that, unlike June beetles, these bats don't fly around looking for females. In fact, they may be the only bats in the world that lek. Something that is far more common in birds like grouses and capercaillies. Lekking, for those of you that are unfamiliar with this mating strategy, is where males occupy little territories of no particular value. They're often in close proximity to other males, and they don't really fight for preferential territory. Which is interesting because males are also much larger than females, something that tends to be common, more so when males do fight for opportunities to mate. Often males compete for access to the best territories, as those territories are likely to have the most females in them. Females aren't picking a male so much as a valuable territory, and the male in the area ensures that when she wants to mate, he's the only option. But that isn't what's going on here. The males are all close to one another. The females aren't picking the best territory, they are mate shopping at a man-bat buffet. So the males aren't fighting physically to ensure that they're the only ones that have access to females. But that doesn't mean that they aren't competing. They are. A tiny fraction of the males do almost all of the mating. 6% of males sire about 80% of the offspring. So in some way, they are competing. There is something that they do that makes females disproportionately pick some males over others, and it clearly has something to do with that crazy face. So is it just the most beautiful face on earth to lady hammerhead bats? Maybe, but that doesn't seem to be the main thing. In reality, the importance of that face seems to be more similar to the shoulders of subterranean frogs than to the beautiful colorations, exaggerated feathers, and elaborate dances of birds. It appears that it isn't about how they look so much as how they honk, which likely explains a bit about why males are so large, why their vocal cords are 3 times larger than those of females, and why they, like a drum, subwoofer, or purple frog, benefit greatly from a resonance chamber. But instead of inflatable shoulders, they have monster honkers, which literally serve to amplify their honks, like many hadrosaurs. So they have huge, hideous honkers like the huge heads of hadrosaurs to help heighten their honks, since hunks with huge honkers have higher hopes of having heirs, and huge honkers are heritable. Okay, let's do one more. By the way, today's Patreon Extras video has a lot of information about valuing your time, about skipping, and murder. So if you'd like to see that video, or you just want to support this channel, please consider checking it out. We just looked at a male that is much larger and weirder than the female. And though male purple frogs are much smaller than female purple frogs, they aren't any weirder. But this beetle, a female trilobite beetle, is also bigger than the male. Quite a bit. And for a beetle, she is way, way weirder than the male. I mean, the male is not only smaller, but he is a rather unremarkable beetle by all accounts. Though some do have some pretty elaborate antennae. So flying around patrolling for pheromones is probably a prominent pursuit for postpubescent members of the Platyrodrillus, at least those of the paternal persuasion. Platyrodrillus being the genus to which these beetles pertain. So the males are pretty normal for pheromone-seeking beetles. But the females? I mean, if I asked you to guess what that was before watching this video, how many guesses would it have taken for you to land on a beetle? I bet a lot of guesses. And if you already knew that these were beetles, I'll wager that you didn't figure that out on your own just by looking at them. Somebody told you what they were. Because while they are rad as heck, they don't look like what most people would think of when they think of beetles. So why are they like that? I mean, they are so weird that for a very long time, we didn't even know that there were males. Because who would have thought that the males of these most bizarre, perhaps of all beetles, would themselves be, well, so normal? This huge wingless spiky beast that eats wood, fungi, slime molds and the like is mating with some brightly colored winged, spineless, nectar-eating little pipsqueak. If you did, by some miracle, recognize this amazing looking creature as a beetle from the get-go, I would reckon it is because you were familiar with a few other species of beetles. Beetles like ladybugs. Now, I reckon that pretty much all of us have seen ladybugs before, which are actually beetles, not true bugs, and only about half are ladies. But before they become ladies, they're just little girl beetles, and little boy beetles, called larvae. Larvae being the juvenile form of insects that undergo a complete metamorphosis, the holometabula. We've got a whole video about them. Well, as is typical of larvae, they look dramatically different from the adults of the same species. And larval ladybugs look like this. I always thought they looked like little hexapodal lizards. And despite being familiar with these little lizard insects and ladybugs, I didn't ever figure out the connection until I was taught about them on a documentary. It often comes as a great surprise that mealworms and superworms are both beetle larvae. And larval burying beetles, the beetles I studied in my master's thesis, don't look much like beetles either. And the pupae of pretty much all of them look like the aliens from Independence Day. Now, ladybug larvae, despite looking awesome, don't look as cool, and they're much smaller than adult female trilobite beetles. But if you somehow pegged this amazing creature for a beetle, I reckon it is because you notice the similarities. But obviously, there is an important difference. Sure, some beetles look a bit like these rad beetles as larvae, but as adults, they look much, much more like male trilobite beetles, with flight wings and hard elytra covering them when not in use. They wouldn't look like this unless they failed to undergo metamorphosis, or at least didn't change much when they pupated. And while there are some insects in the holometabula that never pupate, these do. But when they emerge from a brief pupation, they emerge as mature, reproductive adults, but they look basically like big larvae. They have no wings, no elytra, no compound eyes. They are what you would call a larviform adult, but they have maintained a number of attributes generally typical of juveniles, a phenomenon called paedomorphism. So for some reason, despite undergoing metamorphosis, they maintain many juvenile characteristics that are not maintained in the overwhelming majority of beetles. So now the question is, why? Why are they like that? I mean, it's probably not that difficult to have a mutation prevent some parts of metamorphosis from occurring, but why has this mutation taken over the females in this genus? I mean, the beetle body plan is one of the most successful animal body plans in history. The ability to both fly and jam yourself into tight spaces seems to be working great, not to mention armor for protection. So why sacrifice flight and armor? Why would that ever be better? Well, I'll start with one thing about trilobite beetles, and in fact the entire family to which they belong, that might make some of this start to work. Trilobite beetles are members of the family Lycidae, the net-winged, when they have wings, beetles. As such, members of this family, including male trilobite beetles, often sport bright aposematic warning colors, often with high contrast stripes like you see on bees and many other wasps. Multiple dangerous or distasteful species using the same basic warning signal is called Mullerian mimicry, and it just means that predators don't need to be selected upon or learn to avoid each signal independently. That's beneficial for everyone involved. In general, avoid attacking things with contrasting stripes of dark and bright. So they are chemically defended, which might make armor less important. And males can fly and have great pheromone-seeking antennae. So females can be found without flying around themselves. Many moth species emerge from pupation so laden with eggs that they cannot fly. Only if no male shows up will they lay some unfertilized eggs to drop weight so they can fly. Better to fertilize some eggs than to die alone all full of eggs. Am I right? So at times, it appears that being able to fly comes at the expense of being able to carry as many eggs. And if you aren't going to fly, why use all that energy growing and maintaining wings? So in some cases, if you don't have anywhere to be, it might be better to put all of your energy into baby making. This makes much less sense for males who don't need to be large to make enough sperm to fertilize tons of females, if they can find them. So wings are a huge benefit, and large size, not so much. But for a toxic beetle like this, sacrificing armor and flight to become a baby-making machine that basically still looks like a baby itself seems to be working just fine. And that is why they're like that. Should we do this again? As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon. I'm really excited about this series for a couple of reasons, but one of them is these are all the animals that I intend to cover in this video and in future installments of this series are animals that 10 years from now, probably most people will not believe in. Whenever they see any evidence at all of these animals, they will be pretty sure it's AI because they don't look like they're real. And so I will inform you about animals that look like they have to be AI, but aren't. You have questions?
Marie, what is the reference there?
Decapitation.
Oh, they were decapitated.
Yeah.
I don't know
That's
who
a
Anne
morbid.
Boleyn is.
Anne Boleyn is one of Henry VIII's wives. Not all of them were decapitated, but she was.
It's pretty morbid.
Indeed. Have you seen the frog?
Holy! I would not call that a hammerhead.
Well,
I would call that a mule face.
a mule-faced bat?
Yep.
Or like a camel.
I buy all that. I really don't know where they got Hammerhead.
Hold on. Okay, underneath the wings of the male, does he look anything like that?
No.
What is... That is insane! Sexual dimorphism.
Yes.
How did they ever figure out, like, only when they were copulating did they ever, like,
Oh!
and then we were like, this is interspecies sex! What's going on?
This is a fun video, huh?
Yeah.
What's the title of this video?
Why is it like that?